Hey guys, welcome to Revenue Accelerator. This is your host, Kat Stancic, and I have with us a fantastic guest who actually does a lot of what I do. So here's the thing. You can have people and promote them that do the same thing you do because you want other people to see the brilliance that they share. So just kind of, giving that little caveat right here. I'm going to let Geraldine introduce herself because people always do a better job than I do. So Geraldine, please tell us who you are, what you do, and why you do it.
So thank you, first of all, for being on the show. It's amazing being always in touch with you. And so what I do is I help business owners grow their business by putting in systems and processes. Um,
Sexy.
yeah, super. Yeah. It's like honestly, most business owners will be like systems.
I know,
Seriously,
but
that sounds
they're
like
actually
constraints.
like that's like the best money generating thing is to have these systems and processes in place. They don't understand.
Yes, it's the most like, oh my God, that's the biggest. If you want to grow your business while spending more time with your family and not putting out fires the whole time, like that it actually
Mhm.
doesn't get like more anxious as you go along, then you have to have the systems and processes in place. And that's where like a huge chunk is going to come in. So that's what I do. And
Yeah.
why I do it is because my child, because I grew a couple of businesses from 1 to 5 people in the business to 35 people within a year.
Mm.
So massive growing and scaling. And so I know what it means to really have to put in systems in place because it won't work in a lot of things. You'll just throw out a whole bunch of energy, money, time
Yes.
if you don't have them. And that's the most valuable thing, especially to parents, because you don't just have, put your head down and grind because you don't have anything else in your life. You
Right.
actually have family that you want to spend with and see your children grow up.
Absolutely. So, what is like the number one most important system to have in place no matter where you are in business?
Great question. So it does highly depend of where you are and what you
Yeah.
have in the business. But where I start out mostly is already just getting to the point where you have a very specific yearly goal that you're heading
Mm.
towards. And I'm
Mhm.
talking like for most people, it's like 1 to 2, having a critical number
Yeah.
that you can reach within a half a year.
Ooh. Yeah, baby.
See, that's it. Because if you reach it, that's going to motivate you. And then you can set a new one. That's great,
Right.
right?
Right.
But set a goal that you pretty much know you can reach half the time. And then so my yearly plan, strategic plan goes then to 30 days and then at 90 days, then 30 days, and then weekly. So you know precisely if you're
Mhm.
doing whatever you're doing now is going to lead to that year. So okay,
Yes.
I'm gonna tell you one thing. The most important thing, if you have these 3 things in place while you're especially growing a team, but also for yourself, you need these 3 things. You need a very clear outcome.
Mm.
And it sounds so obvious, but what's common is not common practice,
Mm.
unfortunately. So you need a very, very clear outcome. And what happens in most entrepreneurial businesses is, they go to a conference, to a workshop, and they say, oh, I had this great idea and heard this, and they change things up. And that's why it's quite frustrating at times to be working for an entrepreneur. But the the second thing is you have to have a scoreboard, a
Mm.
process. So if you don't have a clear system that you're making progress, it can be feeling like you're not moving forward,
So
which
what are the things that you think people should be tracking? Because I mean, this is like KPIs, right? Key performance indicators, the things that you need to be tracking in your business. What would be like a couple of things that you think are critical that people make sure that they keep their pulse on?
okay, so if we go into like a monthly overview, first of all, you have your critical number. A critical number is, especially if you have employees, but also for yourself, is the number that shows that your business is growing.
Mm.
That's the one key number. If you look at it and it's going up, you're going to be all cheering, right? Then after that will be, of course, for the business owner, the KPIs. So knowing your numbers, right?
Mm-hmm.
What sales did you have? Like really put
Leads,
it down.
sales,
I love
connections.
data.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. You have to know your leads, you have to know your sales, you have to know the people who went out of your program, um, literally your net worth
Right.
at the end,
Right.
right? So having that very clear, it's like most business owners don't even have that in place, and they're like making decisions not based on clear data, and have a congruent system to analyze their business with.
So there's a mindset component here that I just want to kind of like address, because we were talking about this before we started recording, which was mindset is all great and good. And like, I get it. It's super important. But at the end of the day, action is the thing that's going to really help you get results. But what's really good about this is, especially if you're not like generating the level of consistency that you want, right? Let's say you're doing 10K and you're wanting to go to 20K. 10K is getting you by, but 20K would make a real difference in your lifestyle and all that good stuff. But what I see a lot of times, and I think you see this too, is people aren't tracking those key performance indicators. So the sales, the leads, the who's going out, who's coming in. And then they feel kind of out of control of their business, right? They're just not sure where their next client's coming from. But if you're looking at and you're tracking these things, it tells a story in terms of what's working and what's not in your business, which is kind of why you do what you do, because the system of tracking and having things in a predictable manner really helps you understand what's working and what's not, and then how to scale from there. Because if you know it's not working, then you can put your attention on it and fix it. And if you know what's working, then you go and you amplify that and get even more results. I mean, am I totally off base there?
No, it's absolutely correct. I mean, what's the purpose of systems?
Organization, consistency. I feel like I'm being quizzed.
Sorry.
Am I right? Am I right? Tell me, am I right? I need a gold star.
So, I mean, the main purpose of any system is to get the behaviors or the thought patterns or the
Mm,
story and the clarity that you want, right? So if you're absolutely on spot when you said, if you want a system to have absolute clarity where you are in your business, to make decisions from, then if you need a system like having these data points to be able to do that. To if something happens to you and you would have an employee at one point doing it,
hmm
he could replicate your success because you figured out what works and what doesn't.
Oh, you just hit on something so good, which is, are you documenting and creating a
Ooh.
system of how you and yourself create success so that you can then empower an employee if that's where you want to go, right? Which, the employee VA, whatever, you're empowering that employee to duplicate your success. Like, there are
Yes.
so many people who don't even take that level of effort. They just assume a VA is going to be able to know what to do, or an employee is going to be able to know what to do, and then just kind of give them all this free rope, and then they screw up, and then you get mad at them, but you didn't empower. I mean, how often do you run into that as being kind of a
Oh my
huge
god.
impact into someone's bottom line?
I I see it, unfortunately, far too much of leadership teams who blame their employees for bad
Mm,
performance
mm.
when in fact they don't have a good system. We can call it system, environment, whatever.
Communication process, same,
Communication
all of that. It's a system. Yeah.
exactly, it's all a system, but you don't have that in place that they actually, for example, coming back to the three things before, was they don't have a clear outcome and they have no idea if they can succeed or how they're going to succeed.
How do
And
you measure? How do you measure success? Like,
how
how do you know
exactly.
you actually achieved it? Like, you were saying that from the get-go of having that clear goal, and how do you quantify? Because you might think success looks and feels a certain way, but unless you can actually talk to your ego and say, this is what success looks like, and it means this number and this amount of money or this amount of clients or this amount of profit, like, what is that number for you? Um,
And it's like people forget, coming back to where we started off, is so when you're especially going above, let's say 1 to 2 people, where it would be already super important for you to have it mapped out so they can repeat your success,
mhm,
right?
mhm.
Because we don't say, so many expectations we have in our head, we don't say, unfortunately, and we forget that. But what happens is if you go even one stage further and you would have to have a leadership team, for example, those people actually go through the same exact thing that you're going through right now. So what people tend to forget is all the questions and all the challenges that they are facing.
Mm. As they grew and got their skill sets and mastered what they do. Yes.
Their leadership team is just one step behind learning everything that you do. So that's the positive thing that I've learned having been there. Anticipation is the power, right? If you can anticipate. And that's what you have as a leader. You can anticipate what that person is going to get through and build systems and an accountability system, a support system around that person to, yes, keep them accountable on the other side. But you pave the way that you can coach them to success and you don't have to micromanage them. And that's you can only do through systems.
So if we've got someone listening who's got a team, anywhere between 1 to 5 employees who's, trying to really scale and they're not seeing the results that they want in their business, what, and that's very limited information, but what would be the first few things you'd look at in order to say, okay, this is where the problem may be, because you're not getting the results you want?
Okay. It's depending a bit. So I have a few assessments that I would go through because that is quite broad. But number one is I would look at the time where the time is spent from the CEO. So doing, I don't know, time study, for example.
Yep.
Like,
just wrote an email today about that. Where are you spending your time? Is it going to generate money, or are you just trying to hide from what you need to be doing?
yes, but really like having a time study where you like write down what you're doing every 15 minutes.
Yep.
You will hate it for 2 weeks. You will hate it.
That's a long time.
Yes. It's people hate it and love it. It's like, actually clients told me like, yeah, I actually optimized my time just by thinking about that you're going to see it. And I don't know if you know.
So they preemptively got more efficient so that you couldn't see what they were actually spending their time on.
It's really
nice.
Funny.
That's called accountability, people.
It's exactly. So it's the same like by employees. If you're not sure, should I hire or do they have so much? Let them do a time study so you know exactly what they're doing. Then you have like data, right? And another
Facebook,
thing is
20 minutes.
Yeah.
Instagram 35.
It's like, what are you,
where
how
are you
can we
spending your
optimize
time?
it?
Yeah.
And then it's you can make an assessment of how much focus are they putting on the lead generation, on lead nurture, on product development, on the different types of areas. And really looking into, okay, where is the challenge, and is it a process challenge or is it a like leadership communication challenge? Like, do you need a influence strategy? Because what people mostly forget is like even some processes that you put into your system, like for example a policy, is actually to teach people how to think. Now, what would, for example, be what could be an example is like a policy, for example, let me think. I had Paul Cherry, who's a best-selling author, on my podcast, and he had a 4-step questioning process that people had to go through to actually, when they solve a problem, that they would actually have to first answer these questions and then go ask him for a solution. So having a process like that where you say, first do these things before you come to me and say, help us solve the problem for me, which by the way also works for your children.
Isn't it amazing?
It's like that's a process, right? That's a process that over time teaches people to think. And it's thinking about it in these terms. It's like, okay, when something doesn't work, like I always tell my kids, like, oh, that didn't work. We need a new strategy. That's all it is. It takes like the emotions out of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and doing it over and over again, there's a certain time and place where you realize that the system produces a certain amount of results. So either one of two things happens. the system isn't working as effectively as it was, and so the system needs to be updated. Or two, people aren't following the system, and so you need to talk to your people about why they're breaking it, right? And having those communication conversations. So one of the things you focus on a lot is communications and how to effectively communicate. And I know you learned that. I mean, the best kind of way to do that is to have a child, because there is nothing that gets you more prepared to talk than having to repeat the same shit every day of get your elbows off the table, get your elbows off the table, get your elbows. How many more times am I going to have to say this? Enough times that I'm going to be sick of
So funny.
it. So what do you see as the biggest communication issue that people have when it comes to, kind of making money in their business, really? Let's just call it out.
The biggest challenge in the communication in the business. So, mm, so one thing that I see over and over, if you make an influence strategy,
Mm,
is that you actually think about. I mean, there are influence models, not actually in sales world, but really in leadership way,
mm,
that you think about how do you want to let them think differently?
mm,
How do you want, how do you raise them to a bigger standard? Because we're kind of go in the direction of, oh, I don't want to, tell them what to do, or they know it, or whatever. But it's a leader's job actually to think like a thought leader,
mm.
to be looking forward and how you do that. I mean, anybody, you're gonna think it's a quiz test again, but anybody who has ever influenced you, like a person who has really, really influenced you, has probably either role modeled a way that
Mhm,
inspired you,
mhm,
right? Or he challenged you to think bigger
mm,
or think more of yourself,
mhm.
right? In a way, or that you behave differently. So they challenged you
Yeah,
at a point
inspiration and empowerment. Yeah.
to grow, right? And it's exactly this, that you, when somebody challenges you, that, or let's put it that way, we think take maybe this is the biggest challenge, we take things too personal.
Yeah.
Like, it's not about us, it's about the other person. And I
But
could.
you said something there that, it's a leadership thing, but it's also, if you think about the sales process, you are taking a leadership role where you're helping someone else identify that there's a potential solution to a problem that they have. And I had never thought about it that way, in the way that you put it, which was, part of the conversation that you're having as the person who's inviting someone to work with you is you've been positioned as someone who is in an influential position. So you're either someone who they admire, that they want to be more like. And it's not an or, it's and what you've done through the process of the sales conversation is allow that person to feel more empowered. Right. There's a problem that they have, and they are feeling like a victim to something that's happening around them. And they don't want to feel that way, essentially. And they want to be a victor. And how do you do that? But show someone that there is a way for them to be empowered and to overcome the obstacle that's in front of them. And I'd never thought about that as your role in the sales process and as a leader is to, I mean, I knew this, but I hadn't connected the two in terms of the sales process. Was you want to empower your employees. You want to empower them to to take on more responsibility and to drive results. And that's what you're doing as part of coaching and teaching other people is you're empowering them to get results and to do more and to do bigger and to not need you anymore, right? Essentially. And to be good, to be their own leader. I'm just kind of having this like visceral aha moment with you on
Yay.
the phone, right? Of like, it's amazing how when you step into that leadership role in the sales process, it mirrors. And a lot of people that I know that I work with and that who are listening to this have this corporate background, right? And so they understand the leadership role in the corporate environment. But a lot of times you've got to find that thing that parlays your corporate experience into the entrepreneurial experience. And it's a word, it's a feeling, it's emotion, but they're the same. But sometimes that connection piece isn't there. And so, I'm going to start talking to my people about how when you're in a sales conversation, you're the leader and you're helping that person not say, hey, you follow me, you're diminutive and all that, but hey, I'm going to show you a better way so that a rising tide lifts all boats. Is that kind of your philosophy as well?
Yes, exactly. It's, you know, people want to follow people who have, people want to follow leaders. It's
Yes.
especially in sales. We don't want to be pitched at or sell that. That's
Right.
not, that's,
Doesn't feel
but
good.
what's exactly, but the same thing is in leadership, if it's for your people or in a sales conversation, if you teach people how to think
Mm.
differently
Mhm.
or challenge them, but here's a little beware kind of, it highly depends with what intention you go behind it.
Yeah, manipulation and positive and support are all based off of intention. What's your intention? Are you trying to get people for their credit cards and use them, or are you trying to truly empower them and support them?
One and two, um, are you coming from a state of curiosity and caring about the other person
Yes.
more than, I'm going to teach you something now. I know
Yeah.
it better than you, because we
Yeah. The
feel it.
ego. Yeah. Yeah.
The ego. We feel that ego in not even less than a second, and then the conversation is over,
Mm.
right? The same is with especially our loved ones.
Mhm.
That we highly are reactive. If they come to us in a place of
Girl.
right?
Yeah, especially around those holiday seasons.
Yeah. But if they come from a place, they can even ask almost the same questions, but they come from a place of curiosity,
Yeah.
right?
The
And
energy behind it, right? What's the
exactly,
motivation? That's perfect.
exactly.
So
And that's a big thing.
what do you think is the next thing that I if leaders were focusing, and leaders as the business owner, as a parent even, leadership in all capacities, what do you think is the most important skill set that people need to continuously be improving?
Well, first of all, seeing that influence skills or communication skill is a skill like any other that you can learn.
Mm,
And one of the biggest ones that honestly in my life made a difference. So, telling a bigger story, a short, big story, is I really got interested in this topic when I saw behaviors in my daughter
mm,
that I know she role modeled off of me that I
mm.
didn't like seeing in her.
Yep, got to break that cycle.
Exactly. Because, when you're younger, then okay, you haven't everything figured it out. But when you're older, then you know how you grew yourself, right? With all the mindset and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is, if they role modeled it off of you at that point, and then you kind of have to figure out, oh, shucks, how do I change that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's to, especially in kids, but also with other people around you, seeing that thoughts, emotions, behaviors, they're patterns,
Mm.
you know? And if you can learn to see them as patterns and, for example, interrupt patterns, do
Yes.
you know that? I love that, right? If you could see it more in that and then start thinking about, well, how would I want them to think about the world and how can I role model that, right? Then you become much more aware of just how much you impact others around you.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start noticing maybe on how could you impact them in ways that they make themselves better,
Yeah.
right? Come to a place where they become their best or overcome courage and fears. And it's again, especially with kids, but also with employees, we are too much in our own head
Mm-hmm.
that, especially when things get triggered,
Yep.
they get triggered within us.
Well, we're making it about us and not about them.
Exactly. And as soon as that happens, you're just teaching people literally to talk less with you.
Mm.
And is
Yes.
that
That's not
really
what you
what
want. It's not gonna get you
exactly
the results you want. Yeah, the fear-based, managers, we've all had them. Make sure you comment if you've ever had a, fear-based manager or someone who inspires. And the difference and the productivity and the culture and the environment and the energy is night and day. Geraldine, how can people get in touch with you? Because you've got some amazing content as it relates to structures and systems and communication strategies that I think people should definitely check out.
so either over my Facebook page, Geraldine Schmid, my webpage, GeraldineSchmid.com.
Keep it consistent, baby.
Keep it consistent. It's going to come out soon in the next month, but for right now, it's Facebook or over my podcast, Influential Parentpreneur,
Nice.
where we talk about routines and also influence tactics. And just an add-on shortly to what you said before, it's what people forget is, especially as leaders, if you build the leadership quality, it's as you said, you built the culture with who you are as a person, with what you do, and with the systems that you set in place around you to take off the load, do what you want more. So lower the pressure and continue to drive forward with energy.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us today. And guys, make sure you check out those show notes. It's got all of the links that Geraldine had mentioned, and check out her upcoming website with a bunch of information for you guys to be able to start and continue crushing it in business.